My name is Tom Walsh. I'm the State Representative from the 12th Essex District in Peabody. I represent Wards 1, 2, 3, 4, and Precincts 1 and 3 in Ward 5. The rest of the city is represented by Representative Ted Speliotis, which is Ward 5, Precinct 2, and then all of Ward 6. So since we last talked, hard to believe it was right before the holidays last fall. I no longer serve as a city councilor. My term ended at the end of December, and I had 4 great years. I loved serving on the city council. But it does allow me a little bit more time to focus on the state job, and to be truthful, it's nice to have a night off once in a while. As far as history repeating itself, it was 30 years between the time I ran for city council the first time and 30 years between the time I was elected to the State House and when I was elected to the State House in 2016. I was also city council president when I announced I was running for state representative both times. So it was kind of strange that I went back and did it all again, but it has offered me, I think, an advantage. When I walked into the State House this time, I had a very good feel for the building. I understood how to do a lot of things that when you walk in that first time, you're kind of in awe and trying to figure out your way around. So some of those things I was able to do and kind of hit the ground running. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening the last 6 or 8 weeks anyway, primarily about the budget, because we have just wrapped up the statewide hearings of the Ways and Means Committee across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I was proud to have one of the hearings right here in Peabody. Senator Joan Lovely and I chaired, and it was nice to show all of my colleagues some of the great things we have in the city of Peabody. And I have to tell you that almost to a person, they were so impressed with City Hall and what we're trying to do in downtown Peabody, working with the mayor and the city council and really all the city officials who are working diligently to increase the vitality of downtown Peabody. So it was fun to show off the city a little bit, my hometown, so we're proud of that. But we've been working on the budget. It's basically a $40.9 billion budget. So it's the FY19 budget that we're working on now. And we have been traveling across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts holding hearings similar to the one we had in Peabody. Each secretariat of the cabinet, the governor's cabinet, will come in and present their budget with their secretary, the commissioners, and the people who work in the various departments, and advocate for what they need to run their departments for the next year. We also have input by the citizenry, and that was really the reason that these visits and these hearings were created, to go across the state, because years ago there were complaints that you had to live in Boston to have a say in what was going to happen with the budget. This way, everybody in every region of the state has the opportunity to participate, and we think that's important. So now what will happen over the course of the next several weeks and months is the House will propose their budget. We will debate that sometime mid to late April, and then the Senate will debate the budget. And then the goal always is to have a budget signed by the governor and in place for the new fiscal year, which begins on July 1st. The sooner that we can get the budget done, it's easier for municipalities then to craft their budgets and know what's coming as far as local aid and Chapter 70 aid, which is your school aid. So we try to get those things done so that the mayor, the city council, the school committee, and all the officials locally can plan on what they need for the upcoming year. It's funny, there's so much more to the job than just when you go into the full formal sessions and vote on various pieces of legislation. We're constantly fielding constituent calls and trying to help people in the Peabody area who have concerns with state government. If we can facilitate their, navigation through the different departments, we're constantly doing that. But when we are in full formal session, some of the most recent bills was an Alzheimer's piece of legislation that really directs the Department of Health and Human Services to create a new set of guidelines, and it also tightens up the requirements for those who are serving that population as far as licensing requirements and what their educational needs have to be. And I think that's very important. It's unfortunately a growing illness. We have many baby boomers who are now aging and getting into that older generation. And we have to make sure that as the population grows and more people are afflicted with this disease, that we're ready to service them. So we've been working on that. The House fairly recently did their own sexual harassment policy, which is probably the most comprehensive and most stringent policy in the United States of America of any legislature, and I think that's very positive. People are now feeling comfortable to come forward and correcting these problems so that down the road, we're not going to have this issue. And I think that's important that we address that, so that was very positive. As we were traveling around the state during the budget session, we heard from someone who was talking about what's occurring, particularly in the vacation areas, the Cape, for instance, and the Berkshires, where people who used to rent their homes for a week now are renting them daily because of the way they would be taxed or not taxed. So now we're trying to make that even. And I think it's a positive thing. The Airbnb legislation really is trying to put Airbnb on the same playing field as hoteliers, because right now, if you rent a hotel room, you're paying a tax on that room, and you are regulated. There are certain health requirements and building codes that you have to meet. But as far as Airbnb goes, you can rent your property with no inspections, no health inspections, no fire codes. We don't know exactly what's happening. So one of the amendments that I filed for the piece of legislation just makes sure that if you rent an Airbnb, you're called the occupant. If the occupant rents from the host under false pretenses, that they understand that it's punishable by law of a misdemeanor up to 2.5 years in jail and or a $5,000 fine. And the reason I did that is, you'll recall there were a couple incidents in Massachusetts. In one community, we had a college student who rented a home, and about 600 people showed up for a party. And when police called for backup, an off-duty police officer who was working a detail was driving towards that scene and was hit head-on by a car coming from the party. They need to be responsible for that. There was another incident in Linfield where the party got out of control, and as far as the homeowner knew, it was just a few people coming because of a wedding or something to that effect. So it's important to me not only that we make it the playing field level for everybody, but also that people who are going to be doing that renting are well aware of their responsibilities when they do that. But the other problem is, too, for anybody who's young, who's trying to buy a home, the median price of a home in Peabody is about $415,000. So when you have businesses coming in and buying properties, it's really squeezing a whole group of home buyers out, and that's not fair either. It's not about taxes as much as it's about regulating an industry that is done fairly. It's the same thing. If you look at what happened with the taxi industry, they were heavily regulated. They had to pay for their medallions, and a fairly significant amount of money for those medallions, especially in Boston and your larger cities. And then when Lyft and Uber, it changed the way people get around. And the rates were completely different. So it put some cab companies out of business. We don't have a taxi cab company in the city of Peabody anymore. We have people from the outside for the most part, because our largest cab company is gone. The concern there has always been trying to make it a level playing field. And the other part of that is there's a concern about those who are disabled and what access they have to ride-sharing programs. So some of those things are going on. Look, whenever you do a piece of legislation, those who are the interested parties, some want things so that they feel that they have been kind of put on that same level, and others don't want it because they think we're over-regulating them. So, that's just another example of, as a legislator, trying to get everybody's input and then deciding what is in the best interest of everybody in the Commonwealth. So one of the other pieces of legislation that I've been working on with Representative Paul Tucker from Salem and Representative Dave Vieira from Plymouth, as part of a subcommittee of the Public Safety Committee, is working on regulations that really came as a result of an audit conducted by our state auditor, Suzanne Bump, on the Sex Offender Registry Board, and how they keep track of those who are supposed to register on a yearly basis. And we found that there were some that had kind of fallen through the cracks. They had almost 1,800 people originally that they said they could not account for. And working with the Sex Offender Registry Board, with the auditor, with chiefs of police, with the Sheriff's Association, we traveled around the state, got input from everybody, and have worked on some recommendations that we have submitted to our chairman of the Public Safety Committee, and now it's a matter of figuring out how we can tweak current law and really work towards protecting the residents in every community. When we had the hearing, we were concerned about that 1,800 number of people who had fallen through the cracks. And what we found out was it was really not 1,800 people out there that were just running loose. It was the systems that the Sex Offender Registry Board was or was not using as far as accounting for these people. And a significant amount of those people, when you check death certificates and things like that, or have gone to another state, there are tracking systems that now are going to be used that were not, and we'll have a better understanding of where everybody is. A couple little bills I think I mentioned last time, and they are moving forward. One is creating a Blue Star license plate for family members of police officers who were killed in the line of duty. That was reported favorably out of the Committee on Transportation, and now it's up to me to get that bill moved. And hopefully we can be successful this year in doing that. It's a small thing in respects to some of the comprehensive legislation that is going on every year at the State House, but it's an important piece, I think, to the families of police officers. You know, they have a tough job, and hopefully we never have to use it, but we want that available to them, to the families, if that case arises. Another one, a fairly simple bill, is a bill that I filed that would have the Commonwealth of Massachusetts present to families of fallen victims of fallen firefighters the Massachusetts flag and an American flag if they too pass in the line of duty. So that bill was reported out of the Public Services Committee. That's moving forward. Again, small bills in the whole scheme of things, but I think important to those professions, and we're moving forward with that. One of the things that really has changed, I think, for the better since I've been in office, and I've only been back for a couple of years, is the amount of citizen participation and activism. And I don't know whether that's really a result of what's happened nationally, but there seems to be much more input and activism by individuals across my district and across the Commonwealth. And I think that's a positive thing. You know, the hard part is when you have people who are on opposite sides of an issue. They feel very strongly about their position. There are times that I feel as strongly with them, but there are times when I have to take a step back and look at the broad picture and really make sure that what we decide is for the best interest of everybody in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So sometimes that's a little bit more difficult. We've seen recently, especially the student movement since Parkland. And I just happened to be finishing up a meeting in Peabody when I found out that the students were going to be walking out at the high school. So I had the chance just to poke my head in and listen to the students. And I have to say that I was so impressed with everybody who spoke. Their speeches were phenomenal. And to their credit, they allowed both sides to speak. So you had people who were strongly in favor of the strictest gun control laws you could imagine, and then you had somebody who really talked about people's right to own a gun. I thought it was a fair presentation. What impressed me more than anything was the respect that all the students showed to every one of those speakers, and I thought, you know, we have a lot to be proud of in the city of Peabody, and the kids did a great job. And I've talked to students who have been walking through the halls at the State House, not necessarily my constituents, but if they did stop and say, hey, are you a representative? Talk with them a little bit. I think that's positive because we're engaging a new generation. Massachusetts has some of the strictest gun laws in the United States, and we're bringing people in. They're learning about what we have here, what they can do both at the state level and the national level. So I think that's positive. The Me Too movement is another area where we've talked with a lot of people who are involved in demanding respect, I think is the simplest way to put it, and rightly so. It's unfortunate that we have to have this movement, but I think all these different movements and this activism will only produce positive results in the end. So as I always say about this job too, is the best part about it is every day when you cross that threshold, you're never quite sure what you're going to be dealing with. There are issues of the day that come up in the local newspapers that people will have questions on. That's a fun part. As Andrew, my aide, will always say, every day is a piece of the puzzle. And I think that's a great way to describe it. There are days when I still walk down the corridors of the State House and I just look around and say, I can't believe I'm here. There's really something incredibly special about it. People can always reach me at the State House. Number there is 617-722-2676, and my email is thomas.walsh@mahouse.gov.